In this video, we'll have a look at how to create app tables and then also how to create, read, update, and delete data inside of those tables. So one way of creating a table in Backendless, and remember in the free version, you only get 5 tables here that you can use. So make sure that you use them sparingly, and if you need more, you obviously need to upgrade to a better plan, and then you can upgrade your tables also if that tables is not enough. So you can just click on that little plus there, and that creates a new table for you. So the table that we will create is the table called person. And you can just say table person has been successfully created. Would you like to switch to the schema editing? This is when you want to basically set up all the columns. And let's say we're going to have a name column there. So let's say the name column will be a string. We can set a default value so that when we save a new object in the person table, and if I talk about an object, it's basically a new row that we insert inside of the person table. We can have a default value there. So when I insert a new row into the table and I don't specify this value, it will have the default value that I give it here. Then also constraints, it could be not null, unique value, or indexed. And then you can also put a validator there to check if it's an email address, making sure that it's a correct email address or a URL or whatever. So let's say we want to have a name there, and we can create another column there, just going new there, and say, let's say surname. It's also string, and we create. And now you can see the name and the surname columns was created, and then there's a created and an updated column that's automatically created for you. We've seen that in the users table as well. So for every row in Backendless, in any table, you'll get a created and an updated field. Okay, so if you go to data browser now, you'll see name and surname. You've got your object ID for every specific row. You'll have an object ID, which is a unique ID for that object. In your table, there's owner IDs, there's created and updated. So this gets created for you automatically. So this is one way of doing it. But if it's very large and you need to keep track of the data types here and let it correspond to the Java data types, it could be difficult sometimes. So another way I'm going to show you is to delete this table now. I'm going to delete the person table, and let's rather go and do this now in coding. So I'm going to go to Android Studio, and what I've created here is just a simple application that will have the buttons create, read, update, and delete. Now, in order to work with Backendless tables, you need to create a class that will basically represent your table. So if I'm going to create a person table here, it's the same as creating a class in Android. So let's go to the Java folder there, or to your Java package folder there. You're going to right click and you're going to say new Java class. And that class will be called, in this case, person. Now, if I name my class person here, and as soon as I save an object of this person class, it will create that table for me. And now, very easy, every field in your Java class will become a column in your person table on Backendless. So if I say private string, and I want to have this as the name field, and then I will have a private string surname field, those two fields will now become my columns in my person table. So you can use your name and your surname there. Now, you'll remember that it also created, if we create this table quickly again, let's say person, you'll remember that it creates, after you create your first one, let's say name there, you will see that it has created and updated. So there's two fields, created and updated, that you can also add to your fields in your Java class. So we could also say there, private date, and that's the java.util date corresponds with the one online. So it's going to be private date, and then you call it created exactly like they have it there. So it's private date created, and we're also going to have private date updated. So those are the two fields that was created. And if you remember correctly, as soon as we start, let's go back to there. If we go to the data browser, you'll also have an object ID there. So there's a created, an updated, and there's an object ID. So if you want to have that object ID, you can see it's also a string there. You can just go and declare your object ID there as well. So I'm going to have a private string, and let's call this one object ID, exactly like I've spelled it now. Okay, so these are basically, these two are the fields, the columns that I created. But these three will be automatically created. And if you want access to them, you need to go and create them as fields and create getters and setters for them. If you don't create them, it will still be there, but you won't have access to them. Okay, so now the next thing that you need to create is your constructor. So remember, constructor is always public, and it's the same name of the class. Now the constructor that the guys in Backendless want is, they call it the default constructor, but remember, a default constructor only exists if your class does not provide a constructor at all. So we call this the no argument constructor that we need to have in this class. And what the default constructor actually do is it sets all of the fields to a null value if it's object types. If it's a Boolean type, you'll set it to false, and all your number type of variables you'll set to 0. So let's just set name equal to null, and we'll set surname equal to null. It's not necessary for us to do these three. They will be automatically updated for us. So I'm going to set the name and the surname to null, and then we can carry on. And now we need to go and create getters and setters. So I'm going to say, if you just right click on your page there, you can go to generate and you can say getter and setters, and create getters and setters for all of those, and you see they created nicely. Now I recommend you right clicking and say generate the getters and setters, because it must be the Java naming convention. If it's not the Java naming convention, you'll get problems online with Backendless. Okay, so this is basically it. This is the class that will create your table for you on Backendless. So you'll create a table called person with a name and a surname column. It will automatically have created, updated, and the object ID. And then when you create a new object, you'll create an object using the no argument constructor, but you're going to use the setters to set the values. So you're going to say set, for example, where's the set surname? There's set surname, and set name is what you're going to use to set your name and your surname fields. So this is the class and how you set it up. It must be set up like this to actually work on Backendless. So make sure that you set it up like this. So this is now the person class. So now let's go to how do we create a new object online. Now before I do this, let me just quickly go back. I want to delete this person class or table there. Let's just delete the table so that there's no app tables at all. Let's go back. And now we're going to create a new object. So let's say person equals new person. And that's just using the no argument constructor there. And for the person, I'm going to set the name. You can see there the set name comes up. I'm going to set the name to John. And then to the next person, I'm going to set the surname, or to the same person, I'm going to set the surname to Rambo. Okay, so there I've set the name and I've set the surname. Remember that your created, your updated, and your object ID will be set automatically. So you do not need to set them at all. And now to save this new person to Backendless, you're just going to say backendless.persistence.save. And you can see there's two options, only sending the entity or using the async callback. Now remember that using Android, you must use the second one with the async callback. If you're using Java only, you can use the one at the top. So we're going to use this one, second one, and the entity is your object that you're going to pass through. So it's going to be person, and then you're going to say new async callback. If you click on it, it opens it up for you. Now the same thing as with users. This one is now saving a person object to your table. Now if this table called person does not exist and I try to save this object, it will create the table for me automatically. It will not throw an error. So let's just show a toast here, and we're going to say successfully saved. Now you will see also that in handle response now, we save the person object, async callback goes into the background. If that person is done, saved in the background, it's going to run either handle response or handle fault. Handle response, if it's done, saved, everything was correct, everything worked. and then you've got a reference to that same person object you just saved there. You'll have a reference to that object. So on that response, you can call any one of the methods that you've got in your person class. And then we just showed the toast, successfully saved. And then remember your handle fault. If something went wrong, we can just go and say fault.getMessage, and it will get the message of the fault that actually occurred. So let's save this and run this quickly, because if I run this now, let's just look at that device. If I run this now, it's going to create a new person object. If I click on the create button, it's going to create a new person object, send the person to Backendless. In this case, also creating the table for us automatically. Okay, so now the app is run. So let's click on create quickly. You'll see successfully saved. So now on Backendless, we've got no app tables at all. So if I refresh now, you'll see the person class was created for me, or the person table was created for me. And there's the name column, there's the surname column. I've got an object ID already created for me. I've got a created already created for me, which is a date and a time. But the updated obviously will only change or get a value as soon as you update something now. So firstly, created will save just the created date and time. And then after that, if you start changing data on this specific object, it's going to go to updated. Okay, so there's the name column and the surname column. It's saved as John and Rambo, everything as we coded it. So let's go on to the next one. I've got data now online. So let's just create a few more. And remember that online you can also create. So I can just go and say new there. Let's say Peter, and I'm going to have the surname also Rambo. I want to just quickly create a few Rambo people here. So let's say Solomon Rambo. Okay, and then let's add a few other people. Peter and the surname Pollock. Let's also create Nelson Mandela. Okay, so there's a few objects that I created. You can see there's object IDs for them automatically, and the created field has been saved there. And you can also see, because I first saved it as Nelson without a surname, and then afterwards I typed the surname, you can see the updated field is also got a value now. Okay, so we've got these data now in the database. And let's say that we want to retrieve only the Rambo people, or the person where the surname is called Rambo. I want to only retrieve those and do something with it from this table. So let's go back, and we're going to go to the read button. So how do we read the data then now? So the first thing that you need to do is to set up a where clause, so you can test for a specific value that you want. So you're going to say string where clause or whatever, and then you're going to indicate a column name. So in our online database there, you can see the columns is called name and surname. So it depends on which column you want. So I'm going to name it exactly like I had there. And then I'm going to say equals, and then you need to use single quotes if you're working with strings, and we want the surname Rambo. So this could be a where clause. I want to search the data on that database or on that specific table where the surname is equal to Rambo. And can you see it's different from Java, where we use two equal signs? We will only use one equal sign there. So string where clause equals surname, and then this is the where clause, where the surname is equal to Rambo. Right, and then you need to use a class called the data query builder, and that's from com.backendless.persistence. So you're going to use the data query builder class. Let's just call it query builder equals data query builder again, and you're going to call dot create, and that creates a new query for us, a new query builder for us. And on that query builder, you're going to set the where clause. So you're going to call set where clause, and then obviously the where clause is that one that we just typed. So you could have also just set that part there just in the set where clause. It's up to you how you want to do this. Then I'm also going to say query builder dot set the page size. Now the page size is default 10. So if you don't set the page size, the most values that you can get with this query builder is 10. But if you can set it to the maximum value of 100. And after this video, I'll show you another video how you can get more than just the normal 100. But it's not a very easy way to do it. But there is a way to get more than 100 values at a time. So this one, I'm setting the page size to 100 and I'm telling it set the offset, where should it start reading, and I want it to start reading from the very first value, which is at position 0. And then the query builder, I'm going to call also, you can also call dot sort by, and then you can say how do you want this sorted. So let's sort this by the name field or the name column. So on Backendless, there's a name column. So we're going to search for the surname Rambo and then sort it by the name. So obviously John will come first, then Peter, then Solomon. Okay, so in that basically that sequence. But when it gets retrieved, it was going to be Nelson, Peter, Solomon, Peter, John. But only Rambo and sorted by name. Okay, so that's basically what we want. So you need your query builder first, and after you've set up your query builder object, you can go to the background and get those data. So then you're going to say backendless.persistence.of, and now you need to indicate the class where you want to collect data from, and that's the person class. So on Java, it's the person class, or on Backendless, it's the person table. Okay, and then you're going to call .find. The first argument there will be your query builder, and that your query builder will say, well, go and have a look at where the surname is equal to Rambo. The page, get 100 values if there's 100 values, start at position 0, and then sort the results that you get sorted by name. Okay, so that's the query builder part, and then you just need to go and call new async callback, and it goes to the background and it retrieves that data for you. So how does it happen? When it's done retrieving the data, it will run handle response if everything was fine. If an error occurred, it will run handle fault again. Now look at handle response. You've got a list of person objects that corresponds to whatever you wanted here in the where clause. Okay, so this is quite nice. Let's just run a toast here. We'll do a toast, but I think with a for loop, just to quickly see if we've got all those data. So we're going to say int I equals 0, I less than response dot size. It's like an array list, and then I plus plus. Right, so we're going to run a for loop to quickly get the data there, and I'm going to show a toast. So this toast will actually show, let's make it a bit longer there. So let's say long. Let's go to a new line here. So we're going to show the name of the guy first, and then let's say go to response.get, and then the index. So we're going to go to I in the for loop, and we're going to call get name. So remember, response is the list. Response.getI is the object in the list, which responds or corresponds to a person object, and that person object's name we're going to get. And then going to a new line, and then we'll have the surname, and that will be response.getI.getSurname. Then let's just go to a new line again in the toast, and then we'll have, let's just use the created field there, just to show you that those extra fields that we created, we can actually get those as well. So it's going to be response.getI.get, in this case, get created, which will get me a date, and because it's part of a string, it will run the toString method of the date class, which will give you a nice output of the date and time. Okay, and that's basically it for this toast. So if we run it now, let me just add this toast here as well. So the toast for the error will be fault.getMessage. Now let's run this thing and see what it does. So remember, we said we want to run this where the surname, or get data back, where the surname is equal to Rambo, and we're going to sort it by the name field. So look at your data online again. There's 3 Rambos, Solomon, Peter, and John. And that toast should show John first, then Peter, and then Solomon. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the output there. So I'm going to click on read now. John Rambo first. There you can see the data. Then Peter. Then Solomon. And now it should not show any toast after that, because we searched only for the surname called Rambo. Okay, so now it's working 100%, and that is then how to read data from the database or from any table. So let's look at how to update your data. So now let's just create a variable at the top. Let's create a list there at the top of person objects. And let's call it people. And then where we retrieve the data here in the read button, let's say just before the for loop, we will say that our people should be this response. So we save that response to the people list at the top, so that when we go to updating, let's say the very first value in that list, we can do so using that list. Okay, so in the update part, so what I want to do here is to just quickly show a toast of the very first person that we've got in that list. So remember, in this list, it will be only the Rambo surnames, and it's sorted by name. So in my list, you will agree that position 0 will contain this John Rambo. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to show John Rambo's information here. So I'm going to say, let's say people.get, and I'm going to reference position number 0. So that will be John Rambo. And I'm going to say get, let's say get surname, plus we'll have a space there, plus we will have people.get at position 0, and I'm going to call get name. So I'll get the guy's surname and name, which should be at this stage, if it's position 0, it should be John Rambo. And then I want to change this John Rambo now. So I'm going to say people.get 0.set. So let's set the surname of John Rambo to John, let's use my surname. So it's going to set the surname to Jurius there. So basically in that people list, people.get is the person object, and on that person object, which is John Rambo, I'm going to set the surname to Jurius. Okay, so I'm just changing the value. We're at update now, so I'm updating that value. I'm giving it a new surname. Okay, and then if you want to change this now, I can just go and say backendless .persistence .save, and again I'm saving that new person or that person object, so it's going to be people.get position 0. That's the one I changed, and then I'm going to call the new async callback, and that actually updates that object for me. And remember, every object is basically a row in Backendless. So if we call read, click on the read button, it's going to get all the surnames with Rambo and save it or sort it by the name field. So the very first value then sorted will be John first. So I'm referring to John Rambo here, and I will change it to John Jurius. Okay, so it will go into the background, save that object, and saving that object knows already what is the object ID of that object, and it's going to set the surname field to Jurius in the background. When it's done, it's going to run handle response. This person object will be the same one that you saved there, but it's now the changed one with the surname Jurius. Okay, so we're just going to say a toast here and say successfully changed, and maybe show another toast directly after that, and we can show now the new data. So we can go and say response.get surname plus a space plus response.get name, just to show the updated data now. And then this will be toast dot, just say toast, and we will say fault read.getMessage. Okay, and that's how you update something. So let's just test this one quickly. I'm going to run this on the phone again. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to read first, because reading creates that list of objects for me. So it's going to be John Rambo, the very first one. Then Peter Rambo. Then Solomon Rambo. Okay, so all of them are in that list now because I saved that list. So all of them are now in this list called people, because we saved it there. People equals response. So now if I'm saying people.get0, I'm referring to John Rambo. So let's just do that one. So now if we call update, what's going to happen? It's going to show me Rambo, John. We set the surname to Julius. It goes into the background, saving it, say successfully changed, and it should say Julius and then John. Okay, so let's look at that one. Update. Rambo John, successfully changed. Julius John. Okay, so let's look at the data online. I've got John Rambo there. If I refresh now, John Rambo should become John Julius. So there should only be 2 Rambos. Let's refresh. There you can see John Julius with only 2 Rambos. And also you can see there the updated field. Right, so that is it for updating your data. Now, the last one for this video is deleting data from Backendless. So now if you want to delete something, it's just as easy. You're just going to call backendless.persistence.of, and then again you're going to indicate on which table do you want to delete something. So it's going to be person.class, and then I'm going to call remove, and then you need to pass in the entity. So let's say online I want to remove John Julius now. So how do we do that? That is at position 0. So I'm going to call to that same list again, people.get at position 0. So that's the one I want to remove. And then you're just going to call the new async callback. Okay, and that basically sends the message to the person class or to the person table to remove this object. And basically the object, we'll look at the object ID and remove that object, even if you've got 2 people with the exact same surname or name and surname, but the object ID is different. It's gonna remove the correct one, and then it's gonna go to the background. If it's done, it's gonna run handle response. If it's something went wrong, it's gonna run handle fault. So we're just gonna say toast successfully deleted. And for the handle fault, it will be toast fault.getMessage. Right, and this is how you delete something online. So position 0. Okay, let's look at this one quickly, because remember now, if I'm going to call read, I'm searching only for Rambo objects. So let's say I want to delete Julius now. So I'm going to search for Julius there to get only the surnames with Julius, and then I'm going to delete the very first one. Now obviously there is only one, and that's the one I want to delete. Okay, so I'm going to search for Julius there. So let's save, let's run it again. Okay, so let's read, which will search for Julius online. It found that one. There's no other toast because there's only one entry with the surname Julius. So if I click on delete now, it's going to delete that specific entry, successfully deleted. Let's go and have a look on Backendless. So it basically means this John Julius should now be removed from this table if I refresh. And there you have it. There was 5 values. We've got 4 now. It's been removed. You know now how to create, read, update, and delete data on Backendless. So in the next video, I will show you a bit more on how can we get more data than just let's say 100 values from the table if you want to get more. Also, how do you delete in bulk, because that's something a bit different. So on the next video, I'll show you how to delete in bulk, and I'll also show you how to get more than 100 objects per table.